Good day everyone, good day Sir Joffer. As we start, we were going to discuss, tackle the life, the achievements, and the contribution of Dr. Florentino Timbreza in the Filipino philosophy. As we start, this is the awards or the achievements that Dr. Florentino Timbreza achieved. First, Kagawad Guru 2022, National Book Award, Gatimpalang Quezon sa Panitikan, Gawad Paraluman sa Aspirera, natatanging gawad ng pagkikilala mula sa Komisyon ng Wikang Pilipino, Gawad ng Lahi at Patnubay at Sining ng Kalinangan, Special Award for Philosophical Research in Filipino Culture, Thought, and Values. And what did the Florentino Timbreza to do deserve the accolades or their achievements? With the other hometown practitioners, Dr. Timbreza has contributed significantly to the growth of philosophical by popularizing the Filipino variety, tweezing the primary roots and intellectualizing its form and content in intelligible Filipino. And nobody can discount the achievements of Dr. Timbreza in the field of teaching of philosophy. Next, for many years prior to his mandatory retirement at age 65 in 2003, Dr. Timbreza was at his best element, embarking on his continuing education, taking on the task of the school administrator, writing textbook, attending conference and presenting papers, giving lectures and delivering speeches, undertaking research projects and popularizing philosophy along with other diverse academic and professional occupations. His professional life spanning in some 4 decades, concrete translate to dedicated pursuit of scholarship in both teaching and research. The reader in some measure is a tribute to Dr. Timbreza. It contains a sampling of his prodigious written output on a wide range of the subjects. The Encyclopedia ng Filosofia, which he co-authored with Dr. Emerita Esquito, Dr. Romualdo Abulad, and Armenia Reyes, and his very own mga hugis ng isipang Pilipino, ang Pilosopiyang Pilipino, are considered milestone in the annals of local publishing and truly the trailblazing in the efforts not only to develop the domain or system of Filipino philosophy but to propagate the intelligence of the Filipino language. In this article features the treats on the literature of the natural and of the moral. In the process, encounters head-on unresolved questions and problems that continue bedevil humankind. For instance, in his translation of Tam Ching Lao Fu, he mines golden nuggets of Asian Oriental wisdom, serving as guideposts or signposts the life right path. A person's primordial search for the meaning of existence, the concepts of life and death, evil, God, and the human soul, ecology and way of life, and timely or topical issues such as terrorism, violence and non-violence, cop dictat, sex selection, and abortion. In the alternative to a dead God, he imposes the idea of relevant personalized, that God had no longer shaped by Judeo-Christian but forged by the humanization of man through freedom, love, concern for fellows, and moral uprightness. The moral issue of abortion, birth control, the moral issue of love making without baby making, and sexist gender preference, sex selection, any takers. Timbreza braces through analytically and critically but never pontificates or invites controversy. In light of this insight, this is not all the novel or radical thought that Jesus of Nazareth, who lived on earth once, preached of a life of peace and love. Although his assessment heavily relied on scientific data rendered in the jargon of biology and anatomy that morph his text into loose medical notes of a family planning counselor's advocacy pamphlet he in occasionally. Next is Dr. Timbreza qualifies and it is just, but surprisingly, he is not a moralist. He neither prescribe nor prescribe. He does not make value judgment. He is a firm believer in a free will that allows an individual freedom of choice in moral or ethical issues that are often contentious and divisive. However, the sovereignty of a personal choice, according to him, must be tempered with responsibility. He reflects the nature of the moral issue of abortion, remind us that the standard of right and wrong is an open question. There is no ready-made moral norm, no ready-made answer to our moral problems. And according to this is the moral decisions imply uncertainty and rest. They involve exercise of freedom or choice of action. It would be intellectually superfluous to make decision if we could absolutely certain of the end result of our action. And next to this is the best selection in the volume are those that deal with the Filipino concepts of causality, life, death, and values whose implications are anchored on traditional maxims or what Dr. Timbreza calls age-old precepts and common saying expressive of the Filipino experience of reality. Next is he opens also that we have seen that Filipinos have their own indigenous worldviews, general perception of the meaning of life, which is continuous with their philosophy of life. They also have values which serve as desirable patterns and traits of good human behavior and the proper ways of doing things that acceptable to the people. In addition to this, the integration and reuse of the original saying, which some of us may regard as anachronistic at this time and age, make the exercise of philosophizing typically Filipino and reveal the Filipino innate philosophy. More pronounced are the context-specific language based on culture derivative causes that underlie, illustrate, or explain how justify the phenomena of terrorism, evil, violence, and non-violence, and copy that, especially the Philippine-originated and copyrighted version of People Power IDSA 1, 2, and 3, as well as the aborted awkward Premier Ayala Center Mutiny, providing human behavior and motivation. Timbreza says those who come to know that how an individual thinks by what he sees or does. for whatever he says is what he thinks. His true personality, his beliefs and views become manifest through speech, the kind of word used, and the manner in which they are said. Filipinos conceive and formulated their philosophy of life and values for their own survival, sanity, and peace of mind. We can discover where a person words meaning through his language because his values find expression in his choice of words ended man in his own language.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. I am Carlo Pipito, and I'm reporting my part of our topic, which is about Florentino Timbreza. Florentino Timbreza is a prominent Filipino philosopher and educator. Timbreza is an influential thinker and a teacher from the Philippines who has made important contributions to the fields of philosophy and education. His ideas have shaped discussions on issues like rule of education, ethics, social justice, and epistemology, like especially within the Filipino context. He emphasizes the importance of education for the social economic development. Timbreza argues education is crucial not just for personal advancement but for enabling societal progress. He says that education is key for equipping people with knowledge and skills to drive economic growth and societal development. Next is education needs to be accessible to all. Timbreza advocates that education must be available to all segments of society, regardless of their socio-economic status or background. And making education inclusive is key for tapping the potential of all citizens and reducing inequality. And understanding and challenging social structures that perpetuate injustice and inequality. Timbreza stresses the need of critically examine societal institutions that and systems that entrench unjust treatment or outcomes for marginalized groups. And he argues that we must challenge bias structures and work to the reform policies that denies rights or opportunities based on their identity. Next is the importance of intellectual curiosity, and exploration. Timbreza sees fostering exquisitiveness and a spirit inquiry as vital for intellectual and moral development. Timbreza believes that curbing critical thinking harms growth and that questioning assumptions is necessary for progress. Yes. And Timbreza sees education as a vital tool for empowerment and social change grounded in principles of inclusion, ethics, and critical thinking. For Timbreza, promoting such active exploratory learning was integral to students becoming proactive social change agent as well. In sum, Timbreza advances a humanistic educational philosophy that aimed at empowering people to dismantle injustice and chart an inclusive, ethical path to national development.
So, Dr. Florentino Timbreza is notable for his commitment to the intellectualization of Filipino and to philosophizing using the Filipino language and of Filipino philosophy. Timbreza inevitably faces the challenge of philosophical situation where opposing views emerge, the presence and or absence of Filipino philosophy. So this statement highlights Florentino Timbreza's noteworthy dedication to intellectualizing the Filipino language and engaging in philosophy within the context of Filipino philosophy. Timbreza grapples with the challenge of navigating a philosophical landscape marked by opposing perspectives, particularly concerning the existence of or absence of Filipino philosophy. This suggests that Timbreza is immersed in discussions and debates regarding the recognition and characterization of a distinct philosophical tradition rooted in the Filipino language and culture. So, furthermore, there is a persistent demand for the intellectualization of the national language by using it as a medium in the field of philosophy, a method in which not all philosophy students and scholars agree to it. As a tribute to his 18th birthday, this project aims to interview Timbreza about the current status, challenges, probable directions, and insights on Filipino philosophy. The interview was set on July 29, 2018 and April 28, 2019 in his home at Muntinlupa City. So, Dr. Timbreza qualifies as an ethicist, but surprisingly, he is not a moralist. He neither prescribes nor proscribes. He does not make value judgment. He is a firm believer in a free will that allows an individual freedom of choice in moral or ethical issues that are often contentious and divisive. So, Dr. Timbreza is categorized as an ethicist, indicating his engagement with ethical principles and theories. However, the distinction is made that he is not a moralist. This means that, unlike a moralist who might dictate what is right or wrong, Dr. Timbreza refrains from prescribing specific moral judgments. Instead, he likely focuses on analyzing, understanding ethical concepts without imposing rigid value judgments, allowing for a more nuanced and open explorations of ethical issues within his work. So Timbreza had a reflection about these ethical issues. So, the nature of moral issues of abortion reminds us that the standard of right and wrong is an open question. So, there is no ready-made moral norm, no ready-made answer to our moral problems. Moral decision and pride are sensitivity and race. They involve the exercise of freedom or choice of action. So, Timbreza highlights that moral issue of abortion underscores the absence of predefined right or wrong standards, emphasizing the open-ended nature of moral questions. Making moral decisions involves inherent uncertainty and risk, requiring the exercise of freedom and choice. Absolute certainty will render moral decisions intellectually redundant. Will render moral decisions intellectually redundant, reducing them to mere enactment by predetermined rules. So, in this context, personal responsibility is contingent on freedom. As responsibility loses meaning without the capacity for independent choice. So, arguably, the best selection in the volume are those that deal with the Filipino concepts of causality, life, death, and values, whose explications and endorse on traditional maxims of, or what Dr. Timbreza calls age-old adages, precepts, and common sayings, expressive of the Filipino experience of reality. So, this is the most notable contributions in the volume in which are addressing Filipino concepts because these expressions encapsulate the Filipino experience of reality, enriching the philosophical exploration with insights deeply rooted in cultural wisdom and tradition. According to Timbreza, as we have seen that Filipinos have their own indigenous worldviews, general perceptions of meaning of human life, which constitute their philosophy of life. They also have values which serve as the desirable patterns and traits for good human behavior and the proper ways of doing things that are acceptable to the people. Filipinos conceived and formulated their philosophy of life and values for their philosophy of life and values for their own survival, sanity, and peace of mind. And yet, I agree this statement because it suggests that Filipinos have distinct indigenous worldviews and a philosophy of life, encompassing general perceptions of the meaning of human life. Additionally, it notes that presence of values that defines desirable patterns of behavior and acceptable ways of doing things as for Filipinos. The assertion that as Filipinos conceive and formulated these aspects for their own survival, sanity, and peace of mind implies that these cultural elements serve practical and psychological functions in the Filipino context. While generalizations about an entire population should be approached with care, this statement reflects a perspective on the cultural and philosophical aspects of life. So, thus we come to know what and how an individual thinks by what he says or does. For whatever he says is what he thinks. His true personality, his beliefs and views become manifest through his speech, the kind of words used, and the manner in which they are said. We can discover a person's world of meanings through his language because his values find expression in his choice of words. Indeed, man is his own language.